Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Josh. Now, recently on this channel, I did a video talking about my brand new apartment, and I actually gave a tour of it. But as a financial advisor, I felt some responsibility to make sure that it was a financially prudent decision before I moved into my dream apartment. So what should you be thinking about? How should you be preparing to move into your dream apartment or buying your dream home? Time to think like an investor. I want to walk you guys through what my thought process was when I was moving into my new apartment, because when you're looking and shopping around for new places, whether you're buying or whether you're going to rent, you kind of have to walk through the scenarios in your head. What can I afford? What's safe? And I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of feel apprehensive. You want to make sure that you're making a good financial decision and not overextending yourself to the point where you're going to put yourself in a terrible spot later on if there's an emergency. You just kind of are nervous about the whole thing. So I think the biggest problem about this is that there's a big difference between what is legal and what is right, okay? And what I mean by that is there are guidelines and rules and laws for what a bank is allowed to extend someone. And there's guidelines for landlords too. Like, they're only going to allow you to take on a large enough rent payment that you can actually afford, right? And so when it comes to buying a house, there are a few different, there's jargon, there's terms we use, things like gross debt service ratio and total debt service ratio. And really all these mean is there are different ratios that the bank or lender is going to use to assess if you can actually afford the house that you want to buy. Typically, a bank won't extend you a mortgage if the payment is higher than 32% of your gross income. And they won't let you take on any more debt if your total debt payments are more than 40% of your gross income. So really what they're trying to determine is, what is this person's gross income? And based on that income, what is the maximum amount every month will allow them to spend? So if we use a scenario like $75,000, let's even just use annual terms. If someone makes $75,000 gross, where I live, usually that means they'll take home about $51,000 after tax and after deductions, right? So there's a difference between your gross salary and your take-home pay, all said and done. In this case, we have $75,000 gross and $51,000 take-home. But the crazy thing is that these debt service ratios that are legal but not necessarily right, are based on your gross income. So although you make $75,000 but only keep $51,000 after tax and deductions, the bank and different landlords are going to try to approve you for financing based on the gross income number. So if we think about the gross debt service ratio, right? 40% of your taxable income. What that means is if you make $75,000 a year, 40% of that is $30,000 per year. What that means is the bank will continue to loan you money so long as your annual mortgage payments or debt payments or all sorts of debt isn't more than $30,000 a year. And at that first glance, that might seem okay. It's like, okay, I make 75, but I have 30,000 in debt payments. But the reality is that you actually only have 51,000 in take-home pay, right? You have taxes and you have deductions. So what this means is that the bank is willing to extend you enough debt to pay $30,000 a year in debt payments, even though you're only making $51,000 after tax and deductions. So what that means is you're making $51,000 in your bank and $30,000 of it is going out in debt. Does that seem right? Like, does that seem sustainable? Absolutely not. If we break this down into a monthly number, what this means is that $75,000 a year is $6,250 a month, right? And the bank is okay with you spending all of that on debt payments except for the last remaining $1,750 a month. Isn't that crazy? That's like 28% or 25% of the money that comes into your bank account every month is left over after all the debt they've extended you. Does that sound like a position that you actually want to be in? Well, that's the amount of debt they're actually going to approve you for. And the same thing kind of goes for renting. A landlord will typically require that a renter doesn't spend more than 30% of their gross monthly income on rent, okay? So in this case, what that means is, same example, 75,000 gross, but you only take home about 51. That person could spend 22,500 per year on rent and still be within the bounds of reason for that landlord. But does that seem like a situation you want to be in? So this is what I'm talking about. What's legal or what is allowed is very different than what's right and what you actually should be doing.
The real question is this: was all this legal? Absolutely not.
You see, it's so important to understand that your landlord's incentive or your bank's incentive, your lender, whoever it is, their incentive is not to put you on the best financial footing. Their incentive is not to make you wealthier or to make you happier. Their incentive is to make sure you're paying them as much as physically possible without going bankrupt. Because for a landlord, it makes them more money if you're paying more rent. And for a bank, they're obviously in the business of charging interest. They want to make sure you're taking on as much debt as possible. So when you go talk to your landlord and you get emotionally tied up in a property, you want this apartment, or you find a house and you really, really want it, and you go to the bank and you say, can I afford this? They're gonna say yes, as long as you're under the legal requirements, but that might not at all be what is best for you. So that leaves us with the question, what is right? What is the right way to approach this so I can actually feel secure and safe instead of just kind of being the subject of the bank's business or paying money to some landlord? What is right? Well, first things first, you can't live a luxury lifestyle and you can't be spending money on these things that you dream of, and it goes without saying, if you don't have an emergency fund. And I know this sounds so cliche, but you don't understand the psychological toll of not having an emergency fund and blowing money on things that you want but don't need. Listen, your brain has evolved psychologically over time to store up and prepare for the future. Your brain is trying to make sure that it doesn't die. You want to subsist and continue living. So what your body and mind need to feel safe and secure is to make sure you have some sort of backup plan. In the event that there's some massive emergency and the car breaks down and the furnace goes and all these things happen at once, you need to have enough money on standby to make sure that you can cover those emergencies, right? This is so important. And I think for 80% of people, the way for them to get rid of most of their financial stress is to just build up an emergency fund, because now they're not living in this state of scarcity where any little thing could derail their entire plan. But now on to the bigger part, okay? This is the part that matters. When you're thinking about how much can I afford in terms of rent or how much can I afford in terms of buying a new home, it's important not to think about what will the bank give me or what will the landlord allow. It's important to think about what amount of money can I afford to spend and still have enough left over to live the life I want now and in the future. That's really the big question. What amount of money can I commit to paying and still have enough left to survive and thrive now and in the future? So let me frame this another way, the way that I approached it when I was buying my new apartment. The thought is, what are the major financial goals I want to check off over the course of my life? How much savings does those require? And if I move into my dream apartment, which I really want, is there still enough money left over every single month to achieve those things as well? Because if I have an emergency fund and I'm putting enough money away every single month to check off all the goals that I have on my plate, why not feel free spending a little money on myself or doing something that I actually enjoy with that extra money? So let me break this down and make it real and bring you through what I was thinking about. And I'm gonna make it personal, okay? So when I was moving into my apartment, there was a bunch of things on my plate that I wanted to do in addition to that. First things first, over the next 6 months, I wanna take 2 trips. I'm going to the Dominican Republic in the winter, and I'm also wanting to go to Toronto in the spring, okay? So what that means, with flight points and all these different things I've racked up because of the pandemic, I haven't been traveling, I have so much stuff saved up that I honestly don't really need to save that much. I need to save about $200 a month for the next 6 months to make sure I can do that. So my total tally right now so far, I need to make sure I can save $200 a month. Next, come next year, I really want a set of new golf clubs, and that's something I'm just spending on me, and that's gonna require that after selling my existing ones and buying the new ones, I'm gonna have to be saving $300 a month for that. Okay, so now we're at $500 a month. In addition, I might not wanna rent forever, and I wanna make sure I have a down payment saved up. Now, luckily, I have a ton of money in home equity that I would probably use to refinance. If I wanna put 5% down on a house that I really like, that's probably gonna be $40,000, maybe $50,000. But because I already have this amount of equity saved in a property that I can refinance and use, I don't need to think about saving monthly for that. So we are still at $500 a month that I need to be saving for just other goals I have on my plate. And then next, the big one, I need to be able to retire at 55 with $100,000 a year. That's just my baseline. I wanna make sure that if my business goes terribly and everything falls apart, I can still retire at 55 with $100,000 a year until I die. And what that means is, you know, I'm a financial planner, I've done the math on that. I need to be saving about $1,400 every single month. So what are we at here? We've got the travel, we've got the house down payment, we've got the golf clubs, all these different things that I want and retiring. And the total amount I need to be saving every month is $1,900. That's my total. So if I have an emergency fund, and I can afford my dream apartment, the commitment on that, and still have $1,900 a month left over, then I should not feel too bad about doing that for myself. This is what I'm trying to get at here, guys. Things are a big mystery when we're trying to decide how much of something we can afford. We kind of look to other people. We look to a financial advisor. We look to our friends. How much are you guys spending on rent? How much are you guys spending on your car? You're trying to size up what is comfortable, what's the right thing to do. But in reality, the right thing is different for everyone because everyone has different goals. If you have 16 different goals and you want to retire on $1 million a year, that's going to require that you spend a lot less on your house, right? There's just different things for different people. But this is what I would be thinking about and what I encourage you to think about if you want to buy or move into an apartment and you're thinking about what can I afford? Can I afford this thing I want to buy, like this house or this apartment, and still have enough left over to have a life I can enjoy today and save enough for the future that I could be excited for? So anyways, guys, that's how I approach questions of affordability. That is the framework that I would use. So if you got any value out of this video whatsoever, make sure to hit that like button below, hit subscribe, and turn on post notifications for more videos just like this one every single week. Until next time.